Hello, I'm Dave Blumey, the host for today's show. Have you ever had a yearning for something more in your life? Have you ever, has life ever left you unsure of what the next steps that you will be facing? Have you been searching for a more peaceful approach in your contact with your family, your friends, your associates? Then maybe you're searching for something with a deeper connection to your God. Today's program is going to talk about an institution that's been around for about 25 years, the Spiritual Life Center. And so our guests today are going to tell us about that and how it operates. So, Kathy Murtha, can you tell us a little bit about the Spiritual Life Center?
Yes, Dave. The Spiritual Life Center is a wonderful organization that we call a community. And it's dedicated to helping people discover the ways in which God might be active in their lives. And for people who are searching, it might give them some ideas. For people who already have a faith journey, it might just support their journey and deepen their journey. And as you mentioned, maybe answer some of their questions about life and the ways in which life impacts us and causes us to ask some of those deeper questions.
Good. Kathy, maybe tell us, where is the Spiritual Life Center? Something people have heard about perhaps, but don't know where it is.
The Spiritual Life Center is right off Simsbury Road in Bloomfield, and it's at 120 Mountain Avenue, and it's an old farmhouse. It's actually located on the property that was once the La Salette property. In fact, the town of Bloomfield has La Salette Park, which is literally in our background.
That's right, yes.
So it's an old white farmhouse, has a wonderful wraparound porch. It's very welcoming. And as you enter in the first floor, you come to our main hub, the receptionist and the place where we do most of our practical work, our office work. As you come down the hall, we have a lovely reception center. And because we're a center that calls itself a community, we always have refreshments out. We want people to feel welcome. So hospitality, in a practical sense, as well as in a spiritual sense, is an important part of who we are and what we do.
Okay. And our other guest today is Eduardo Barrios. Eduardo, could you introduce yourself and maybe respond to who comes to the Spiritual Life Center?
Sure. Thanks, Dave, for having me, first of all. It's a pleasure to be here with Kathy, my good friend. And I am a spiritual director at the Spiritual Life Center. I was commissioned in 2004 and been closely associated with the center since that time. And so I see directees there at the center, those people who want to experience a deeper connection with their God by going deeper into the story that they hold. Each one of us has a story that's hard to talk about at the kitchen table. There's a lot of mystery in the journey of life and of spirit, and the spiritual direction process allows us the capability, the structure, the environment where we can kind of tell our story and look at the different aspects of our spiritual life. So it's a great gift to be able to.
Eduardo, does someone have to belong to a religion or belong to a church to be able to come to the Spiritual Life Center and take advantage of that?
No. It's open to all faith traditions, people from all faith traditions, as Kathy has already mentioned. And frankly, people of no faith tradition who just want to, share their story and to understand the deeper meaning of their life. So it's very, very welcoming, as
open
Kathy
to
said,
all.
Open to everybody.
Okay. Kathy, is there a cost involved with coming to this and taking advantage of these things at the Spiritual Life Center?
We talk about donations more than we talk about cost. We are, in the state of Connecticut, a 501c3, which makes us a not-for-profit, and we are also an organization that wants to offer our gifts to whoever comes, on the one hand, and on the other hand, we want to be able to sustain the work we do and to provide for the needs through scholarships for those who cannot afford our services.
So if someone can't afford it, they can still come.
They can still come.
That's wonderful.
We usually have suggested fees for day programs or for spiritual direction, and certainly there are tuition fees for our major programs, the spiritual direction training program and the pathways.
Could you expand a little bit on those two, this internship and the pathways? Tell us what that means.
Those are probably our two premier programs which take most of our energy and our planning and our resources and our staff time. The internship in spiritual direction is a 2-year program which really provides a community context for the individual who seeks to be a spiritual director to focus on their own spiritual journey, their own listening skills, their own assumptions about God and about people and about how we are to live in the world in such a way that they can then become free to be with other people and to listen to other people's stories.
Okay.
And to do it in as uncluttered a way as possible.
Well, let me come back to the pathways in a moment, but Eduardo, you're a graduate of this internship program. Could you tell us a little bit about your 2-year experience?
Sure. It was very interesting. I ended up being the only male in the group, which was great.
You're courageous.
Yes, I am very courageous.
Yeah.
But it was a very welcoming experience from the beginning. There's a little bit of process in the beginning, an interview process where the staff finds out a little bit about you as a candidate for the internship, which is a great process because you're able to reflect on your own journey. So part of that involves writing a letter and meeting with the leadership of the center. But the journey itself was great. I had a wonderful time.
How often do you meet, say, for example?
We met, once a week,
For
over the course of 2 years. And in addition, there were some retreat dates that we had, weekend retreat dates.
So you get a lot of training to be able to be a spiritual director.
Yes, and one of the things that's the most important from my perspective is to be able to learn how to listen very, very carefully, not only to your own story, but to the stories of others, and not get in the way. So the program really teaches us to listen with the ear of the heart and to be open to all kinds of human experience.
Kathy, what is a typical spiritual direction when someone meets for spiritual direction? What happens? What goes on?
What happens is they're welcomed into the Spiritual Life Center, and sometimes spiritual direction happens outside the center, in other people's homes, agencies.
Okay. So it isn't just at the Spiritual Life Center.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And when they come, usually people come with an openness and a readiness that they have thought about their life, they've done some reflection, they might have a question, they might have a thought about something they read, but most often they will have some experience where they either felt there's something more that you were talking about, or a wondering, or maybe a tragedy, or maybe something like September 11th, or like the national conventions of the political parties now. Something there caught their mind, their attention, and they want to think about it and talk about it on a deeper level.
Okay.
On the level that invites God into the conversation.
All right. That's the key. Is that
That's the
the
key.
difference? Okay. That's
Yeah.
how okay. How is spiritual direction different than counseling? You hear about people going to counselors a lot.
They're similar in that, as Eduardo said, those listening skills are absolutely essential to both disciplines. The focus of spiritual direction is on the individual and their ongoing search for and relationship to the divine, the holy, how they come to know God, and then how that is lived out in their life.
All right. So I hear that spiritual direction is done not just at the center, but if it's at
Correct.
the center and I'm working till 5, 6 o'clock, How do I get there then? Is the center open after those hours?
Yes, it is. We have official hours of like 9 to 5, where we have groups coming in or programs going on, and certainly some spiritual direction going on. Our busiest time really is from 4 to 7.
Okay.
Because most people who do come to spiritual direction have lives, have very busy lives.
Right.
And very often after work, and occasionally on a Saturday, that you would find a person or a group meeting there.
Does an individual who comes sort of stick with the same spiritual director all the time, or how does that work? How do I find someone who fits me?
Well, what happens, Dave, is that when you come to the Spiritual Life Center looking or seeking for a spiritual director, there's an initial interview.
Okay.
Which Andre does. And she talks,
Andre
Grafstein,
okay,
whom you'll probably meet in another one of these conversations. Andre sets up an interview and has maybe about 40 minutes to talk with a person about what's specific about their journey and what they might be seeking at this time. There are times when someone thinks they're looking primarily for how God's at work in their life, but might really be focusing more on a psychological issue or an issue of grief that might need attention first to clear the way so they can be clearer about their God question, be more open to it. But most of the time, the people who do come have this interview, and we try to do a little matchmaking. We try to find a person who very practically has the same schedule that they do. So it could be someone who really needs to come in the evening. It could be someone who, because of childcare, needs to come during the day while his or her children are in school.
Okay.
So that's part of it. And part of it is because we have become more diverse in terms of religious tradition and religious background.
From what faiths do people come?
From, as Eduardo was alluding to, from most of the Christian faiths.
Right.
Certainly some Jewish folks, an occasional Muslim folk, certainly people who transcend religious affiliation because they're looking more primarily at their recovery process. So we always have people from the 12-step programs, especially Alcoholics Anonymous, who might be interested in doing their deeper work of those steps. We might have people, especially younger people, who are not as committed to a particular religious affiliation, who are seeking and are looking for a place where they can talk about their questions and might not have either the vocabulary or the experience of a faith tradition.
Okay, so you don't have to have a particular faith, and you cover all the faiths.
Yes, we try to be open to all of the faiths.
Okay. Eduardo, with this sort of renewed interest in spirituality, is there something that's driving this? What do you think is bringing people to the door of the Spiritual Life Center to seek out this spiritual direction and this sort of thing? Is there something that you hear as you're talking to people?
Well, I think that I know from younger generations that when the institutions underneath us seem to crumble a little bit, and we know that we're moving through a war right now, that there's some conflict in the world, not just there, but in other areas. People are looking for something more. Is there more to life that I should be paying attention to? And of course there is. There's the whole notion of being alive from the heart space. In other words, working from your internal place outward instead of spinning with the world as it is outside of you. So I think people are looking for a place to center themselves, to ground themselves, where they can't necessarily find it outside of themselves. And this is not uncommon. This is actually a common theme for all faith traditions. You know, trying to find your heart space and your internal place. So I think that's what people are looking for. They're looking to be loved. They want to come. They want to share their story, and they want to feel connection. As Kathy said, community is a huge thing, not just for the leadership and the people who come and offer direction at the center, but also for directees. And people want community. They want connection. So I think that that's also
The
something.
Spiritual Life Center provides a lot of that.
Yes, on not just the sort of practical level of the beautiful facility and the people there, but connection on a much deeper level. You know, that we're all sharing the human story, and we're all connected in
Now-
that way. Because the spiritual life can seem lonely at times when you're doing the work on your own. So this is a good thing the community.
So it's
can-
accompanying that person on their spiritual journey, holding their hand, if you will, down that path.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Sherpa, you know, on the Himalayas.
I mean, I have to carry a big pack on me.
Well, sometimes you help with the baggage that people bring, but
All right.
but you know, it is called spiritual direction, but really you're helping to guide because you've been on the terrain, or you're on the terrain yourself at the
Okay.
present moment, and so you know where the rough spots are, and you can help people see. So I like to think of it that way, as the spiritual guide or Sherpa.
Okay. Kathy, I interrupted you a little earlier. You were about to
Yeah.
talk about the pathways to spirituality. What's
Yes.
that?
Pathways to Spirituality is another program that can be a 2-year program. It's broken up into 4 units, and it's a program that's mostly for those who are searching for community and for deeper understanding of their own journey.
So they don't make the commitment for the 2-year program.
They
can
don't-
they can do a semester, if you will.
Right. Or either. It's either or.
What sorts of things are covered? What kind of topics are covered in Pathways? I noticed that you brought the brochure here.
Mm-hmm.
What sorts of topics are covered in Pathways?
There are 4 units, we might
Okay.
say. And the first one is the unit about encountering God, encountering the holy, encountering the divine. How does that happen for most of us in our ordinary life? It's not esoteric, it's not mystical, it's the ordinary way in which people come to know something of the mystery we call God.
Okay.
And often we think that it's mostly through the challenges, and that there's truth to that, but it's also through the joys in life, that which gives us the most life, the most energy, the deepest love. So it's both.
Okay.
And the second one is building a relationship with God, with the holy, with the divine. And what are the texts, what are the practices, what are the disciplines, what are the communities that really enforce that and help us deepen.
Help
our-
people find different techniques of prayer that they might be using, things like that?
Yes, that's part
Okay.
of it.
Okay.
And part of the learning is also working with a diverse group of people, people from different faith traditions.
So that the attendees at this Pathways, their diversity helps each other to
Yeah.
to grow and to appreciate that diversity in others.
Yes,
Okay.
because most of us are familiar with our own tradition
Right.
of choice or of birth, and we think it might be the only one or it might be the formative one, and indeed it is for us. However, when we start to hear other people's very different experiences, it can open out into other possibilities of ways of praying and of encountering the holy, other sacred texts, other scriptures, other songs or chants that can help facilitate this relationship
Okay.
on an ongoing basis.
All right. So that's 2 of the 4
Yes,
semesters, if you will.
Right.
And somebody could go to one of those and not
Yes.
and then not be available for the next semester and then come back again. Okay.
Yes.
I understand. But what are the other 2? then?
the third one is called to community. The sense that none of us is called alone, that we're always called in a context of community.
Okay.
And the community is not just our faith community. It's the community we live in our towns, what it means to be part of something larger than ourselves for those who are in service arenas. The ways in which if we're going to live in community, we need to learn to talk to one another and listen to one another.
Okay.
That kind of thing. How to facilitate being in community.
That's one that's needed in today's
It
world.
absolutely is. And our last one, the fourth one, is called Ascent in Service.
Okay.
Because once we know God, once we're building a relationship with the divine, once we know we're in community, it's always about going back out again. It's always about reaching out to the margins, reaching out to the larger community.
I know from having my conversation with you that the Spiritual Life Center does do some other outreach type of programs other that we haven't talked about yet. Would you like to mention one or two of those, these outreach programs?
One of the outreach programs that we do is in-service programs for our spiritual directors and for other spiritual directors and pastoral workers and ministers and chaplains. Twice a year we do a major workshop for a day that talks about a particular topic.
Okay, so that's open to a number of people who,
That's right.
graduates of the internship
Yes.
program and others
Yes.
who come in and do that.
Yes.
And you spend a day. Okay.
And,
So
last fall, we did a wonderful program on spirituality with activists of faith. For those folks who are really on the margins. And to try to mend what some people see as a breach between spirituality and justice.
okay.
That true spirituality leads to acts of justice, and true acts of justice have to be grounded in a deep spirituality. Otherwise, there's either burnout on one hand or that self-absorption on the other hand.
I continue to hear these words of that people who come to the Spiritual Life Center have the opportunity and the experience of seeing other faith expressions than perhaps their own. It's not intended to just be for one particular faith, but to broaden people that way too.
Right.
Okay.
And this aspect that you're naming now, Dave, is really important, I think, to the world in which we live. And it's something that you know as a Spiritual Life Center that we've been grappling with for the past 10 years or so. And has, you know, the potential to be so life-giving, but also is scary to some people.
I'm sure.
You know, so it's something that we try to keep open and keep inviting and keep offering hospitality.
Okay.
Because I think our world needs places where faith and spirituality are seen as connectors, not as dividers.
Okay. Eduardo,
Yeah.
you said before you do spiritual direction, but Kathy mentioned that spiritual direction is done in a lot of other venues. Could you tell us a little bit about some of what maybe your fellow spiritual directors are doing? They work in hospitals or things like that too?
Well, Kathy talked about, chaplaincy.
Right.
So the training that you receive in the spiritual direction internship program is training that you can bring to your specific discipline and your vocation. But, I bring it home to my family. I try to practice that out in my daily life and in my work and that kind of thing. So, so from my perspective, I use spiritual direction sort of for my own self-direction first, and then I use the learnings that I've gained through it with others who are close to me, and then with those who I may work with or am involved in projects with and that kind of thing.
Okay, so you're working with your coworkers, who are obviously
Sure.
your family. Do you feel that your experience of the Spiritual Life Center has obviously has enriched your relationships with those other people, other connections like that?
I do, yes.
Okay.
I do. And I think it's been an eye-opener for me on my own journey as I move through life. Just kind of reflecting on those people in sort of faith tradition who have also been through light and dark movements of their own spiritual journey. It's good to know that you're not alone as we move through the spiritual life and the life in general. I mean, it's as we all know, very complicated. It can be. Right. So we just have to pay attention. At least I do have to pay attention to all the texture of it.
In today's busy lives, the people who are watching this are probably saying, how in the world could I ever find the time to go and spend an hour a month? I mean, is that a typical kind of situation?
Yeah.
How can I find that time to receive spiritual direction? How do you respond to that when somebody says that, Kathy?
I respond more to the other side of that question.
Oh, sure.
where most people say, I don't know how I could go on with my life without this.
Okay, so once you tasted it, you don't.
Yes, because as Eduardo alluded to, because of the groundedness it does. And it is a commitment of time. And it is also a commitment to your own spiritual journey.
Okay.
And it becomes one of those marks. If you do physical exercise, you know you have to do it. This is kind of like spiritual exercise.
Right.
And certainly there are many ways for people to enhance and take care of their own spiritual lives and their own spiritual journeys. So this isn't the only way. But for those who appreciate this way, it's just a rare gift. That someone listens to you for a whole hour and gives you that gift of time.
Right.
Most people consider that like something that they want more of, not less of.
That's right. Someone's finally hearing me.
Yeah.
And finally, this thing of spiritual direction. That word direction can sometimes be a little throw people off. Could you speak to that? The connotation of that word?
I know we only have a couple of minutes left, so I'll be very brief.
Good, Kathy.
Direction is about paying attention to the direction of one's life with God. It's not about telling people what to do.
Okay.
It's about, together with the person, having the conversation that explores, what's the direction of your life now with God? How is God leading you?
So the spiritual director listens to you.
Yes.
And the direction comes from God from within. If I'm
correct.
All right.
You got it, Dave.
You're educating me, Kathy. Thank you. That's maybe as we do come to the end here, are the things that I haven't touched on. I hate to be the sort of dominate the direction of this, but things you want to touch on in terms of Eduardo, other topics.
Actually, there was one in service that was focused on suffering that I enjoyed very much. I think it was.
Well, you enjoyed suffering.
Brother
Let me see if I understand this. How did
I didn't suffer at it. It was
right.
wonderful. But no. But the area of suffering is very interesting to me.
Okay.
Because I think, at least from my perspective, I learned how to go deeper into my heart and how to open my heart even more instead of closing it to the world. So.
Okay. So the Spiritual Life Center runs these programs.
These in-service programs are
open
great.
to everyone.
Sure.
Good. As we come to the end, Kathy, I'm hopeful that our viewers would want to know more about the Spiritual Life Center, and maybe you can, tell us a little bit about if they were on the internet or wanted to call. How do they get a hold of you?
The easiest way is probably on the internet for most people by now, and that's www.spiritlifectr.org.
That's a mouthful, but
it is. Or just Google us, the Spiritual Life Center in Bloomfield, Connecticut, right off Simsbury Road.
And why don't you give us the telephone number so if somebody doesn't have a computer and they have a telephone.
860-243-2374.
Okay. Kathy and Eduardo, thank you very much. This has been a delightful conversation. I appreciate your insight. I can sense from the way you glow as you talk about this that it means a great deal to you. And then you turn around and give that to the people that are attending as spiritual directees. So you've recommended it, you've convinced me, and hopefully you've convinced others out there that this is a good thing to try. And spirituality isn't just this unknown thing. There is a place to go to learn more about it. Even if you don't know what it is and you're unsure, they can still call or look for more information on the internet. Okay.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And as we wrap up, we want to thank all of you for viewing the show and being able to be with us today. Thank you.